The National Assembly are now interviewing the various candidates for the position of Auditor General to select a replacement for the current Auditor General, Kimi Makwetu. You know how important the Auditor General is in terms of examining the accounts of government departments and provinces, and someone has to lecture municipalities. Khaya Sithole is a financial and political analyst. He joins us now. Khaya, good afternoon to you. Considering the issues we seem to have around managing money recently, I would imagine the position of the Auditor General is probably one of the most important positions in our system.
Yes, indeed it is, and I think quite interestingly in your banner you say net national accountant, but I think it's important for people to actually understand that the position of accountant versus the position of auditor is slightly different. The accountant will be the one that prepares financial statements, while the Auditor General will be the one that then essentially reviews them. So what is on the line right now is the position of the Auditor General, which is the one that is the Chapter 9 institution that is very well understood in South Africa, but we also do actually have the position of Accountant General. And I think once we are done with today's interviews, focusing on the position of Auditor General and what its role is, we need to then pay more attention to the question of the Accountant General position also.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, the Constitution makes it really hard to remove an Auditor General. I mean, very, very difficult. That shows how important it is to have someone independent in that job.
Yeah, so the reason the Constitution is very, very particular about this being a Chapter 9 institution and also the rules of how one becomes an Auditor General and how one can be removed being so strict is that independence is the cornerstone of what we want in this particular position. So, of course, if they were not given the security of tenure, if they thought that their term of office was linked to whoever was in political office at any point in time, then that independence would be compromised. So the reason it's a 7-year non-renewable term is to really break the link between the 5-year terms of politicians and, of course, the office of the Auditor General itself. So it really is an instrument that strengthens the independence of this Chapter 9 institution.
If I remember correctly, and your knowledge of the history of this will be better than mine, since 1994, I think the person who's been the Deputy Auditor General has usually ended up becoming the Auditor General. There's a sense of continuity, I think possibly quite an important sense. Does that put our current Deputy Auditor General...
Yes, that has
Does that put our current Deputy Auditor General...
Yes, that is indeed... Yeah. It has indeed been the case that the Deputy Auditor General has acceded to the position and become the Auditor General, but of course there is no guarantee that that will always be the case. And every single Auditor General must be assessed on his or her merits at the point in time that they apply for the position of the Auditor General. Being the Deputy Auditor General obviously gives you unique insights, but it doesn't on its own guarantee that you're going to get that particular position. So she also has to put her case like any other candidate out there today, and if the MPs that are then evaluating her form the opinion that she is the best candidate out of the 6 or 7 that they're listening to today, then of course she must get the post.
Does it make sense to have this continuity? Is it a good idea in your view? I mean, obviously, as you say correctly, everyone must be interviewed, they must be judged on their own merits, but is it a good idea?
I think it assists, and remember the alternative here is that in the lack of continuity in other state institutions, we've seen how dire the situation can become when suddenly there's a new person, there's a new broom trying to sweep clean, and in some instances disrupting even the things that were working. And I think you'll know of a particular Chapter 9 institution where there has been evidence. So I do think that the question of succession is an important one, but also perhaps the bigger question of whether succession planning is the one way to ensure transitions and continuity may occur on a more regular basis in state institutions, because what you want them to be able to do is to ensure that there's no interruption at any point in time when one leader has to hand over to the next. And I think what we've seen with the Deputy Auditor General position, it is also a position that is essentially at the discretion of the current or the incumbent Auditor General, but with the concurrence of Parliament itself. So they are always aware of who might step into the position should anything happen to the incumbent, and I think that helps, that definitely assists with the idea of succession planning.
Khaya, I'll scratch my head for the rest of the day wondering about which possible Chapter 9 institution you could be referring to. Maybe I'll get to it. We've seen people in the Office of the Public Protector coming under pressure. Kimi Makwetu has spoken about his officials being harassed, in some cases threatened. I mean, that shows you that the stakes are sort of rising here. This is very worrying.
Yes, you said Public Protector instead of Auditor General. So yes, I think the position or the job that auditors do is a very, very delicate one, particularly when we've seen that they are the ones that always come back and tell us that things didn't go well in a particular municipality or in a particular department. And of course, there's always going to be resistance because you really are just exposing people who haven't done things the right way. So there's always going to be resistance there. And we've seen in some cases that resistance actually escalates to people's lives being threatened. We've seen some auditors being attacked when they're trying to do audits, and the Auditor General had to withdraw those individuals. But of course, the work still needs to be done. So it will be very important for whoever comes up and becomes the new Auditor General to then find a way of ensuring that auditors can conduct their jobs independently and without any fear.
I mean, there will be a question if we look at what Auditor General says every year and has said for quite some time before Kimi Makwetu about, say, municipal accounts and how bad they've been and how municipalities battle to manage their money. There's been no improvement. It's been getting worse year on year, despite what the Auditor General says. So the question might be, I mean, is there a change? Do we need to make a change to the office? Is it just not that effective?
Look, there has been a new change in that the Public Audit Act has actually now become law, and I think the next 18 months will be the first time that we actually see it being put in practice. And the one unique thing about the Public Audit Act and its amendments is that it now says it's not optional. It then goes further and says, you, the person that was responsible for ensuring that that did not happen, so now that it has happened, you are responsible for recovering that. And if you don't make a plan of getting that done, we will come back and say, actually, you must be held to account.